Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Charles Powell and I'm the director of the Elcano Royal Institute. And this afternoon we're very fortunate to have with us Federica Mogherini, who, as everyone knows, was Foreign Minister of Italy and later the High Representative and Vice President of the Commission responsible for foreign affairs and security policy. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask you three very quick questions. You were very kind enough to talk about this earlier when we were at the Elcano Royal Institute. And you talked about two kinds of challenges or groups of challenges that the European Union is currently facing. First of all, external challenges, which are a byproduct of this very turbulent international context in which the EU is operating. And secondly, perhaps some of the internal institutional challenges. Would you like to refer to the external ones first?
Yes, well, it's quite clear that the dynamics in the world, the trends in the world today are very worrying. And as much as I can be an optimist, it's very difficult to see positive developments in global trends. So the first elements, I would say, of challenges for the European Union is the direction that the world is taking towards more confrontation, more conflict, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the conflict in the Middle East that is spiraling and connecting dots of other conflicts in the region, but also global challenges like climate change, but also the pandemics, the increasing inequalities in the world, distribution of power, access to resources, and in general terms, I would say the disgregation of the credibility and the effectiveness of multilateral organizations and sort of global governance architecture that is slowly but steadily collapsing, I would say. So this obviously creates an environment that is extremely challenging for the European Union. So I would say the first element of challenges for the European Union is the environment in which it is operating that is increasingly conflictual and problematic. Then obviously we have some internal challenges that are less worrying for me, I have to say. I think the European Union has an excellent capacity to face difficult moments. Sometimes I think we're better at facing critical moments than navigating through calm waters. And we find always ways to overcome the challenges, I would say. We're more creative when we're facing very extreme situations. So these internal challenges worry me less, but still we have a complicated institutional setup. Sometimes tensions within the institutions or among the institutions in the European Union make it difficult to translate ideas into practices and to find common ground, to be effective worldwide. But we sometimes manage to do that. I think that, for instance, our response to the war in Ukraine has been a good one. Also, our response to the pandemic has been, I think, a very good one. We've managed, I think, to deliver on some very important files on which member states alone wouldn't have managed to do much. There are also internal challenges that relate to the level of ownership and sense of, I would say, commitment to implementing common decisions. But again, I think that the more the external challenges grow, the more the Europeans are able to understand that the internal challenges need to be minimized and dealt with in a good manner.
Can I ask you about the past, as your period as HRVP between 2014 and 2019? You faced lots of challenges in that period as well, because the world was also quite turbulent then. You had, there was an interesting and difficult relationship with the US. The TTIP didn't quite succeed. You had the JCPOA with Iran, which you strongly supported. Russia had recently annexed Crimea, and you had to begin to manage the EU's relations with Russia. What have you learnt looking back over your period and perhaps looking forward to the future? Or if you could sort of do things again, what would you change in the way in which you managed many of these crises and challenges?
I've learned that the European Union has much more strength than it sometimes realizes it has. During those 5 years, we were indeed facing crisis after crisis, not of the magnitude that we're facing today, but still it was the first time that the European Union project was facing difficulties. In particular, the sequence of crisis, the financial crisis, the migration and refugee crisis, Brexit, the Trump administration, Syria, Libya, the annexation of Crimea by Russia. It was a constant sense of being under pressure and under threat and facing one obstacle after the other. And at that time, we had collectively, constantly a feeling of not being able to face these challenges. And you might remember, especially in 2016, there was the sense of this might be the beginning of the end for the Union. And what I've learned is that the European Union is much more resilient and much stronger than we realize from the inside. Because actually, not only we handled Brexit and the Trump administration well, unity was kept, and we managed even to do things that were unimaginable at the time, like providing military support to Ukraine or borrowing money on the market together. So what I've learned is that the European Union is much stronger than we see from the inside. And I think that this is a lesson to keep in mind for the future. Looking at the European Union from the outside with the eyes of our partners in the world, you see that they see a better story than the one that we see from the inside. So I would say the lesson to be learned is to be a bit more self-confident in our own capacity and to trust ourselves a bit more. It is in the DNA of the European even philosophy to be self-critical all the time. But in these times, I think that we need to be a bit more aware of our own strengths.
I always like to say that self-flagellation is the great European pastime. Right?
Yes.
Just two specific events that are looming on the horizon. European elections, US elections, June, November. What are your feelings about that? I have that in keeping with what you were just saying. Sometimes we hear things and read things about the European elections, which again claim that sort of the world is coming to an end as we know it. The far right is going to be, is going to turn everything upside down. It's the end of migration policy, the end of climate change policy, and then of course those who believe that Trump will win and that will be the end of the civilized world as we know it as well. What would your message be to those who are looking ahead with concern?
I think that, I think that the European elections are obviously very important, but the European Union has a system of checks and balances as an institutional complexity that would allow the European Union to keep a certain level of continuity of the fundamental pillars of its policies. Because obviously the European Parliament is extremely important, but it's not the only institution that takes decisions and gives a steer to the European policies. In particular, in certain aspects, the Council is equally, if not more important. Yes. And the Commission obviously has its role to play. So I would say that, again, for once, the complexity of the European Union is probably also a guarantee of a certain continuity and predictability. So I for sure don't think that the European elections will be the end of the world as we know it, not only because the results I think are quite open, but also because in any case they will be one part, the result will be one part of a more of a broader institutional picture that will, I think, manage to guarantee a certain continuity and predictability of the major pillars of policy. And also because I think that European electors and voters are, at the end of the day, quite aware of what is at stake here. And in particular, when you look at the geopolitical environment, I think there is a growing understanding in Europe today of need to be true to ourselves, if I can say so, in terms of values and in terms of identity and where we come from. Then the US elections, still in 6-7 months' time, many things can change. I wouldn't be too surprised if we saw a second Trump administration coming. We've gone through the first one, might manage to go through the second one. I don't think it would be the end of the civilization of the world as we know it. It would be definitely an extremely difficult and challenging time for the United States, first and foremost.
Could it be the end of NATO as we know it?
not for me to say. I think that Europeans would be able, in any case, to navigate through difficult times. Again, we give our best in challenging times. The most difficult the times are, the most we manage to put our acts together. And again, we might surprise ourselves in finding strength and solutions and ideas and policies and instruments that we've not used till now. So I'm confident that whatever happens in the US elections, the Europeans will do their things and not only survive, but survive well.
We will muddle through, at least. Can I ask you about the so-called Global South, an expression I hate, by the way. We at Elcano describe it as the plural South because it doesn't really make much sense
very wise
to lump all of these countries together. There's an obsession now within the EU, I think, and within the member states. The idea is that we haven't been able to manage our relationship with these countries, these emerging countries, successfully. There's a lot of guilt, there's post-colonial angst. There are all sorts of feelings accumulating here. Do you think we are exaggerating this? Perhaps we have preached more than we should have and listened less. But on the whole, do you really think we have such a problem in our relations with these countries?
I think we have, in substantial terms, a lot that brings us together. In terms of interests and in terms of values. Not with all of them, but as you said, it's a plural picture. And with many of the countries that are non-European countries or North American countries, we have a lot in common. Again, in terms of interest, but also if you think of many policies, but also in terms of the way in which we look at the need to regulate and govern the world, which is something that brings us together, I think, quite strongly. So I think that sometimes we are getting a bit lost in the narratives, and we don't focus enough on the substance. I think that in terms of substance, Europe and what you define as the plural South have a lot of common points on our respective agendas. And I think that, and I hope and I think that it will be more and more the case that we work together on this, especially as we need to reform the multilateral governance system that is clearly facing quite a deep crisis, existential crisis. And I don't see how this could be reformed in an efficient manner without Europe and the rest of the world closely cooperating on how to create a normative setup that gives adequate space to those that need to have that voice that is clearly not anymore the one of last century.
As an Italian, you fully understand the importance of Latin America, the fact that this is a region of the world with enormous potential, not in fact a basket case, as is often claimed. We've just published a report, Why Latin America Matters, which basically argues that politically, economically, and also geopolitically, Latin America is doing much better than far better than many people realize. Why is it so difficult to get the EU and to take Latin America more seriously?
I'm not sure I'm the right person to ask because I take it very seriously. So it's difficult for me also to understand why. In some cases, it is not the case. Personally, during my mandate, during my time, both as an Italian minister, obviously, but also as an HRVP, for me, Latin America was somehow a natural partner. The easy, if you look at the map, it was the easy spot.
Sure.
And I've always been convinced that, and maybe this is an answer to your question, we naturally tend to focus on difficulties, crises, problems, and our need to solve them or to address them or to contain them. And this sometimes gets most of our energy. And as we are facing a plurality of very serious crises and challenges and threats and wars and conflicts, we might be tempted to think that we do not have enough time and energies to dedicate to the positive agenda, the partnerships, the good relations. I think it's a mistake. I think that investing in the good partnerships, the good relationships, the friends, let's put it this way, is a good way not only to keep your mental health balanced, because you also need friends in the world, but also to prevent potential conflicts and crises to happen in the future, and to build a network of partnerships that can be of reference also to others in the world. So probably a reason for us not focusing enough on EU-Latin America relations is that we do that only when there are problems arising. And I think this is a mistake, to have a foreign policy that is mainly driven by a problem-solving approach and not an opportunity development approach. But I am quite confident that we can overcome that.
And finally, can I just ask you about the project that has brought you here to Madrid today? You are now rector of the College of Europe in Bruges and in Natolin, and you have set up this European Diplomatic Academy. Can you tell us a little about the philosophy of the Academy and how this project is developing?
Yes, I'm very proud of this project. 2 years ago, a Spanish member of the European Parliament, Nacho Sanchez Amor, has started this pilot project to establish a European Diplomatic Academy to add a layer of knowledge and skills and attitude to national diplomats, junior national diplomats, to develop the capacity to be effective European diplomats beyond being purely and only national diplomats. We have implemented this pilot project now for this last 2 years. Just these days, the Council is deciding to establish this permanently. Josep Borrell has very strongly invested in this project that I believe is part of his legacy. And we are now going to develop the project for the coming years in a stable manner. So every semester we host a group of junior diplomats of member states. As of next year, it will also be open to candidate countries, national diplomats, and EU officials. We host them for 5 months. It's a residential program, so they live together, they study together, they create a network and a bond among themselves, an esprit de corps. But also they learn about the specific instruments and tools of the EU external action that are different than the tools that a national diplomatic service has. They develop also a certain attitude of thinking European, which I believe is going to create the real difference in the diplomatic service of the European Union tomorrow. Having hundreds of diplomats that will go through the same training. We currently have already approximately 100 that during these last 2 years have gone to this project together. Having hundreds and hundreds of diplomats that wherever they will be posted, in their capitals, in Brussels, in third countries, will not only think national, but will think national and European. I believe will really create a completely different asset for the European foreign and security policy. So I'm very much dedicated to this project. I spend a lot of time with them. We have created a unique curriculum for them based mainly on practice. So they have simulations, they have lectures with practitioners, former and current practitioners, a little bit of academia too, but to the minimum.
Not too much.
Not too much, only 20%. 80% comes from practitioners, because the purpose is not only, I mean, these are not students, these are professionals already, these are diplomats already. So it's to really give them the knowledge of how it works in practice. And basically what we try to have, and I think we've been quite successful so far, is to condensate in 5 months the knowledge, the understanding and the networking that you would develop in 1 or 2 years of being posting in Brussels. I'm really enthusiastic about this project, and I'm very happy that this is now established on a permanent basis.
Lovely. Well, I'm afraid we've run out of time. Congratulations on that project, and above all, congratulations on your wonderful mandate as HRVP. We're all very nostalgic, and it's wonderful to have you here with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.